I will begin by saying I have something very big to admit to everyone watching this. Unlike every single person in this room, I actually don't work in education like at all. So today I feel a little bit like this. So this is not going to be an academic talk in any way, shape, or form. I've been listening to a bunch of the other talks, and there's been so many big academic words thrown around, and I love that for you guys, but I just can't do that. I can't keep up with the big academic words. But you know what I can do? I can talk about escape rooms. In fact, I love escape rooms, but yeah, so I am basically going to use this talk to talk about escape rooms because I am quite literally obsessed with escape rooms. I especially love an escape room when it is educational. I'm all about maximally having fun. Ask anyone who knows me. And my favorite kind of escape rooms also happen to teach me something along the way, and that is fantastic as well. So, to repeat a little bit of what Brianna said, if I'm not in education, then who the heck am I and why should you guys care, I guess? So, my name is Mari. I am a freelance game designer and I work exclusively in puzzle games. So, I made this slide to show a couple of the things I've worked on. I typically work on not only physical escape rooms, but I also do a lot of work in board games, in video games, to immersive experiences. As Brianna said, I've been working for about 10 years in this industry, and yeah, huge amount of clients up on the screen now. But a couple of highlights: I did a bunch of work for Wizards on the Coast for a while. I did a bunch of work for this UK board game company called Professor Puzzle. Love those guys. Did a bunch of big Kickstarters for Mysterious Package Company. In terms of physical rooms, I worked with Sherlock in Amsterdam. I've worked with Escape Hunt, which is a global company, so you probably have one in your city, and a bunch of other things. The list goes on and on and on. And when I'm not designing puzzles, if you can imagine such a thing, I also write about them. So here are a couple of the non-design things I do as well. I primarily write for a newsletter about global escape room industry, which you're not going to believe what this is called. It's called the Escape Industry Newsletter. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I'm also the editor-in-chief of a review site called The Escape Roomer. I write for Thinky Games. I write for Thinky Third Thursday. I work for Draconic and Friends. A bunch of kind of sort of big names in the puzzle game space. And yeah, as Brianna said, I'm also the UK ambassador for TERPECA, which stands for Top Escape Room Project Enthusiast Choice Awards, which I think has been said once or twice in a couple of the other talks. So I won't tell you again what that is. But yeah, I do a bunch of stuff in the general puzzle space and general escape room space. And I also like to mentor as well. So I did say I'm not an academic at all, but I do mentor sort of young and upcoming puzzle designers, whether that's escape rooms, video games, board games, whatever it is. So the TLDR to all of what I've just said is I have a bit of a reputation for loving escape rooms. And this is a real sticker that all of my friends relentlessly send to me in all of my WhatsApp group chats. So I have played over 500 escape rooms. Again, big asterisks there because during lockdown, a lot of them were digitized. So I tend to count them because I'm being generous. But if you're being purist, it's about 350. But if you count everything, I've played about 500. And I have worked on over 100 games in my career, which is kind of cool for 10 years if you do the maths on that. So yeah, cool. Which I didn't know until I actually like did this presentation. I was like, hold on a minute, let me count how many I've done. And I went through and I was like, oh yeah. And I totally forgot to mention on my last slide, I also work with Mike on the Infinite Escape Rooms. So shout out to the earlier talk today. I also do audio escape rooms with him, which is very good fun as well. But I would love to tell you about my hobbies, but I don't have anything other than puzzle games. Leah has asked if I've ever done anything with Escape This podcast. We have at the Infinite Escape Room. So we came on and we hosted a couple of rooms for them. Fantastic people. Go and listen to that episode. Love Bill and Danny. They're brilliant. Love those guys. Oh, they were a games master on their recent arc. Oh my God, I'm gonna go listen to that. Yeah, shout out to Leah in the chat who was a games master on their most recent arc. But yeah, okay, so now important part for my talk. Let me keep this back on track. I have introduced who I am, and I would like anyone who is comfortable to post in the chat who they are and what their field are. The more niche and specific, the better, and bonus points if I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I will come back to this in my talk, so this is not just open like I want to see who's in the chat. If you want to drop a comment, tell you what you work on in academia, assume I know nothing about this, which I don't. Tell me who you are and what you do, and we will come back to this. But yeah, where was I? Escape rooms and education. So yeah, when the organizers of this fantastic showcase asked if I wanted to give a talk, I was like, hell yeah, I need absolutely no excuse to talk about escape rooms. And I proposed the following talk, which Brianna thankfully introduced. Let's design the exit. What educational escape rooms can learn from commercial ones? But having listened to all the talks over the last 2 days and having chatted to folks and other talk givers, as I said, I'm like, oh no, you guys are very academic, and I am but a silly billy commercial game designer girly. And I realized a lot of what I originally put in my notes, a lot of the other speakers have actually kind of said already, which is very cool and incredible. They've not only said the best points about working in escape rooms, but they've also said them in a very cool and much more academic way than I was probably going to. I recommend going back to their talks and rewatching them. I do believe they're all recorded, so go ahead and check those ones out. So yeah, that's I should say. So thanks for coming to my talk. You should go watch those instead. Goodbye. No, I'm kidding. I basically, having watched a bunch of other talks, I took a step back and I was like, okay, so if I'm not an academic, what can I actually bring to this talk? Like, why would you guys want to listen to me from outside this industry talk about escape rooms? What nuggets of wisdom can I impart? And I guess as the final keynote speaker, which is no pressure, what inspiration can I leave behind? Because I guess that's the whole point of these 2 days. Like you're all watching and you're like learning about escape rooms and you're like sharing the kind of amazing escape rooms you're working on. But the whole point is to go away and actually what can I possibly impart in terms of inspiration? So I had a good hard look in the mirror and I was like, who am I? Why are they watching? And my answer was, this is what I want to say. I'm an escape room enjoyer and I want to inspire people to make sick ass escape rooms, to use a non academic term. The best freaking escape rooms you possibly can. Because I'm selfish and I want to play more rooms. And if you guys make rooms, then I get to play more rooms. And I can get that number from 500 up to 600 up to 700. You guys can basically help me play more escape rooms, which is all I want to do in my life. So my point of my talk is to basically inspire you guys to go out there and make more good rooms. So when I'm finished this talk, and even while I'm still giving this talk, I want you guys to open up your email clients, start writing letters to your directors, back to your academic institutions, say to your bosses, hey, we're going to make an escape room, especially if you're in the UK, by the way, because the UK needs better escape rooms. And as the ambassador of this, that, and the other in the UK, I'm trying very hard to get people to make good escape rooms in the UK. So we should be making more. But the thing is, I can say that, like, yeah, I want you guys to make more escape rooms, but I will say something quite bold. Some of the best escape rooms I've actually played in the last decade or so, since they first came to the UK, have actually been from museums and actually been from universities. And I think it's because you guys are doing something different. I think you guys are thinking outside the box, and I love it. You have different set of challenges, a whole different set of things you have to, whole different constraints, budgeting things. You have to be creative. You have to do so much more with so much less, I think. And what I've seen in the last 10 or so years has been exactly that. So let's do more of it right now. So I propose to change my talk a little bit. No more what educational escape rooms can learn from commercial ones. I would like to give a talk on what educational escape rooms are already doing that's freaking awesome, and maybe why commercial ones should take note from you guys, brackets. But also, let's not rest on the laurels of past cool rooms. Let's keep designing, and I want you to leave this talk with inspiration and actual tips on how to get started, like right now. But you guys can see why I didn't email Brianna and Claire and ask them to change the title of my talk, because this one's a little bit lengthy and probably doesn't fit on the website. And yeah, as Emma says, very catchy. So yeah, what is this sort of new umbrella talk I'm going to talk about? I am going to talk about a big list of cool games that I have played. You don't get to play 500 escape rooms without playing some cool ones, and I'm going to talk about some cool ones and why I found them cool. I'm also going to aggressively defend fun to you guys. I hear so much in this industry. It's like, this is an educational escape room, but don't worry, it's also fun. No, no, no. We're not doing that anymore in 2026. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about hyper specificity of escape room theme and the kind of advantages educational escape rooms have in that field. We're going to talk a little bit about pedagogy, sort of. More on that later. I'm going to hopefully give you guys some ideas for your escape rooms, the ones that you're definitely going to do after this talk, you're going to make and send me an email and invite me to. And then last, I'm going to try and make it a little bit practical. And I'm also going to talk about funding and support because I do mentor a lot of people who are designing escape rooms. And I kind of try and collect a lot of resources about where people can get funding and support for these kinds of things. And at first, I was like, oh no, this is kind of a different field. This is escape rooms and education. But actually, it's the same. If anything, you guys have a competitive advantage because you're doing something more interesting and more like unique with your escape rooms. So, yeah, this is what I'm going to talk about. A very small trigger warning. I am going to talk about alcohol in this talk very briefly, but just a heads up in case anyone is troubled by that. I will give a little bit of a heads up before I say that. But yeah, that is what I'm going to be talking about today. So let me start by telling you about every single escape room I have ever played in order. Only joking. This is a screenshot of my actual escape room spreadsheet. Believe me, I would love nothing more than to spend the last 45 minutes talking about every single escape room I've ever played. Now, actually, you should ask me questions about this because I've played some really cool ones recently. But the good thing about keeping a spreadsheet about escape rooms is I can find them pretty easily. So when I was thinking about which ones I wanted to talk about today, it was very easy to kind of scroll back through and kind of figure out which ones were academic, which ones were not. And yeah, so I'm going to be making later in this talk a lot of big points about things that some escape rooms do really well and maybe things that are not so good and what works in educational escape rooms. And I wanted to run through a couple of good ones in advance. So the following four escape rooms I've pulled out for this talk show a bit of a breadth of what's possible and what I've seen done really well in like academia, in like educational space. So the first one I'm going to talk about is an escape room that a university put on. The second one I'm going to talk about is an escape room that a museum put on. The third one I'm going to talk about is an escape room in big inverted commas that a tourism board put on. So very cool and very academic, but in a different way. And last, one that I don't know if you guys are doing at your universities, but this is a very interesting one. I'm going to talk about an escape room that a group of students put on that I played and it blew my mind. So yeah, these are the four escape rooms I'm going to talk about before I get into a little bit more of, I guess, the design and support and how you do these. Escape room number one. Let's start right here in Edinburgh. And I say that because I used to live in Edinburgh, but I have a lot of love for Edinburgh, okay? And I played this one in Edinburgh, but I understand people are watching from all around the world. So from Edinburgh Napier University. So, a couple of years ago, Edinburgh Napier made this escape room called Escape the Vault, and that's VOLT. And listen, this was genuinely one of the best escape rooms I've ever played. It was so freaking good. And I think because it was quite a long time ago, I can talk freely about it without spoiling any puzzles. I did reach out to the designer of that, and he sent me a bunch of photos, including the one you see on the right-hand side of your screen, which are of two of my best friends in the world in the escape room. And I had no idea they did a photo shoot at this escape room. So when he sent this photo, I was like, hold on a minute, that's Ray and Avery. What are they doing? Shout out to my friend Avery, who's standing by a notice board that says Notes Science, which is about the level of academia that I'm bringing to this talk today. But yeah, Escape the Vault. The whole premise of this room was you had 40 minutes to solve a series of puzzles, and every single puzzle in this space gave you a mechanical part you needed to build the electrical vehicle of the future. So every single puzzle in there was kind of themed around some aspect of building, like, yeah, I guess like electrical engineering and sort of vehicular science and cool big academic terms there. But the whole premise was it gave you knowledge of that. And it wasn't like, oh, go out and like build your own electrical vehicle level of knowledge, but it was knowledge enough to be like, oh, wow, this is a really interesting field. And I see what kind of some of the challenges students and professors are kind of doing in this space. And yeah, I see what the challenges were. It was a really brilliant room. And brilliant because the puzzles were genuinely fun and especially brilliant because it had one of the most memorable finales that I've had in any escape room, which was, okay, you've built the car, and what do we think we do when we've built the car? They let us drive the car, which is exactly what we did around the room, which is my next slide. So this gift is of my friend. I did reach out and ask if I could share this GIF of him because he does work in universities, and I did tell him this talk will be on, and I did tell him he would be on a slide. He may well be in the audience, and for that reason, he said he wanted to be called Doc Thunderbolt. So this is my good friend Doc Thunderbolt. If you recognize him, you'll know who it is. And he's taking the electrical cart for a spin. So yeah, this was the finale. This wasn't a puzzle, but this was like the final moment of like, okay, we've pulled the cart together, and now here's a final injection of fun. And this made it so memorable, so fantastic. Such a fun little moment that I still think about this game fondly many, many years later. But yeah, so that's Escape the Vault. Shout out to Edinburgh Napier. The next escape room I want to talk to you guys about, moving away from universities, we've got museums. So this escape room is one I did in Nottingham, and it was called Guilty at the National Justice Museum. So hard to kind of explain, hard to compare the kind of escape rooms universities are doing with the kind of escape rooms museums are doing. But I think it comes from a very similar place of like, okay, we want to teach something. What resources do we have? What kind of experience are we going to put on? But what the National Justice Museum put on was basically they did a temporary pop-up at their museum, and it was an incredibly ambitious room. Again, still maybe one of my favorite museum escape rooms. Love that that's a whole category for me now, but escape rooms that are in a museum. And it was what a set. I mean, you can tell from this promotional image they did. The premise was essentially that after the museum closed in the evening, they turned a large portion of the whole museum into an actual escape room. So you, the teams, could kind of move around this physical space, sort of finding clues, solving puzzles. And the premise was you had to sort of prove your own innocence. So I do believe, and I might be misremembering, that it was based on a real case, so like real documents that they sort of found. And you had to review the evidence that was available at the time and decide if did you do it? Are you guilty? Were you likely to be able to prove your innocence in a court of law? And then, yeah, if you couldn't prove it in a court of law, you were sent to prison, and you sort of had to go through ye prisons with big iron gates and stuff. And really cool thing about this room was it did have a multiple choice ending. So yeah, you could prove, you could go to court, guilty, not guilty, or you could go to prison, guilty, not guilty, and then there was a secret fifth ending as well. And multiple ways you could escape this experience. It was amazing and genuinely educational in a delightfully immersive way. Also, because I pointed out my friend Doc Thunderbolt, I'm also going to share my team photo at the end of that escape room. And I particularly want to shout out my friends Alice, Ash, and Natasha, who have all at some time worked in education and are possibly, in fact, definitely one of them at least in the audience. I'm not going to dox my friends by saying which university, but oh my God, hi, you guys are watching it. I love you guys. Um, and in case they're not watching, which I know they are, but in case they're not watching and their colleagues are, yeah, I see Alice in the chat, so Alice is here. Alice, I'm going to speak directly to you. I didn't want to embarrass you by sharing more funny photos we took at this escape room. I would never do that to you, Alice. And I definitely wouldn't pause on this slide a little bit longer than necessary so you can screenshot photos we took whilst playing that escape room. My notes say pause for dramatic effect, but you know, I'm such a good friend. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't stay unnecessarily long on this slide. Anyway, moving on. The third escape room I want to shout out is a game called Ascension. So, moving away from museums and moving away from educational institutions, we have escape rooms for tourism boards. Yes. So, still educational, but serves a kind of totally different purpose because in this case, the educational tour, the tourist board was trying to bring more tourists to this region in a very, very educational way, attract like a bit of a different audience. So this is the town of St. Luc in Switzerland, and the whole premise of this experience is St. Luc is a town at the base of St. Luc Mountain. I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know anything about mountains. But yeah, this town is at the base of this, and people travel to St. Luc to basically climb the mountain.
Sorry, I'm listening to.
Oh, someone just spoke. I thought someone was asking a question, but no, I'll continue.
Sorry.
It's okay. No worries, you're fine. Yeah, so back in ye olden times, there was this historical figure, Ernest Griolet, who was an archaeologist who lived in St. Luc. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to build a lighthouse at the top of this mountain to guide hikers. So don't ask me specifics, I don't remember the specifics, but the premise of this game was you got given this pack by the tourism board and it told you different areas on this various different trails you could take up the mountain and you had to go to that area of the walk, and you had to find panels of information along the walk. And you also around the town had to go into like pubs and local establishments and say secret code words, and the whole thing was just gorgeously illustrated. It was incredible. And yes, I did travel all the way to Switzerland on an escape room trip one time in order to play this. And I did climb the mountain. There's a picture of me at the top of the mountain. I 100% real photo of me. Okay, no, let's be real. I want to make a joke here to be like, as I was climbing this mountain, I had a realization. Not only did I solve the puzzles, but I also realized I don't like hiking. So yeah, second thing to admit in this talk, you actually didn't have to climb the mountain in order to solve this puzzle trail. There were versions you could play around the town, so it was very accessible actually. You could sort of wander around this space and kind of talk to the locals and kind of learn this stuff, and a combination of sort of online and sort of smaller notice boards around the town. So when I got to St. Luke with my group of friends, we decided not to climb the mountain. This is not actually a photo of me at the top of the mountain. We went to the pub instead, and here is a photo of me and my friend at the pub after having solved this escape room. Um, and yeah, this is the point where I talk about alcohol. Sorry, there's a photo of me having alcohol, and I did have a hangover for 3 days, so actually I do regret the whole thing. But you know what? It was a fantastic experience. Honestly, so fun to learn about that. And shout out to my friend Michelle, who does not work in escape rooms, so I can tell you all the sordid stories about her if you want. So I'm not going to dox her by saying anything about her because she's not here today. But yeah, that is the third example. Moving on to the fourth example, my last case study I want to talk about of escape rooms and education is a little group called Escape SC. And listen, I am probably the number one fan, and they're probably, if they're watching, I'll watch this later, going to be mildly embarrassed that of all the cool photos I chose, I wanted to choose this one. So what is this and how does it fit in? So, Escape SC are the student society at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and every single year, they are made up from anywhere between 10 to 20 people. I think, if I remember correctly, one year they had up to 30, but there were a lot of like theater people, so they did a more immersive experience that year. But the whole point is this society has a common interest in escape rooms. They were founded in 2017, and they have made genuinely some of my favorite escape rooms ever. And I feel like I'm watering that down a bit because I keep saying this is my favorite escape room ever. But listen, this one is really good. I know I said all the other ones were really good, but this one is really, really good. I can't comment on all of their rooms because obviously the specific makeup of the team changes every year. But this particular one I played in I think it was 2021 was called Science Splice, and it was made during the height of lockdown when this society couldn't meet in person, and so they made a digital escape room, which is how I found out about them because for once they weren't running just in-person experiences on campus, and I'm based in the UK, I'm not going to travel for that, but they were able to create a digital one that people all around the world could create. I assume they've since graduated, but this is the specific team that worked on this one. Um, Gosh, they were super talented. But yeah, no, Science Splice was this room that essentially the brain was split to left and half side. And again, this is beyond me. I'm not an academic girly, but I understand that the left-hand side of the brain controls some parts of things and the right-hand side of the brain controls some parts of things. So at the start of this experience, we had to split into two teams and we had to only see half the puzzle, but the half of the puzzle we were doing was very different from what the other half could see. It was very techy and it was very educational, and above all, it was extremely, extremely fun. And we will come back to that. Fun, extremely fun. But first, a couple of honorary mentions. So I've got a couple of honorary mention quick fires. I'm going to go through these really, really quickly because I know this is being recorded. So I know that if anyone is really interested in these, they can just go back and rewatch this and kind of see what the things I mentioned are. But these are some educational escape rooms I'm aware of, or I played myself, or just while I was researching this genuinely seemed kind of interesting and worth shouting out. But yeah, honorary mention quickfire. Tunneling Through Time. The Brunel Museum here in the UK did a collaboration with Deadlocked a couple of years ago to make a escape room called Tunneling Through Time, which is available digitally, so you can still play it today. There was a fantastic escape room called The Ghost of Pointe Callière at Pointe Callière in Montreal, which is an archaeology museum in Montreal. It was brilliant, and I actually did later go to Montreal and went to that museum. I was like, oh my God, they like created this like 3D environment. So when I walked through it online at home, and then I actually got to go to the real museum, was like, oh, I know all about this exhibit they've got here. It was just so cool. It was so immersive. It was so fun. There's also a great one which got a lot of international press called The Shadow of Rembrandt by Sherlock at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. I said I did a bit of work for them. I didn't work on this one, but I'm very aware of this one, and I think it did a lot of big numbers at the time. And yeah, more and more and more. I can't talk about every single one of these, but I am just going to click through fairly quickly in case anyone recognizes any. And as I say, if you go through, you can rewatch these, and at the end of this, if you have any questions about anything specific, I'm probably very happy to talk about them. So yeah, some escape room. There we go. Thank God I put that slide in because I didn't know how many I put in the end, and I kept tinkering and adding and removing. Um, but yeah, so plenty of really interesting escape rooms from the last couple of years out there from educational institutions. So yeah, what does this all mean, and what should we take away from this? Believe me, I would love to just talk more and more about escape rooms, but I have to make this into a coherent talk. So, what do these things have in common? They're educational. Yeah, they teach a thing. But even more important than that, they are fun. And I mean that very specifically. There are quite literally hundreds, if not thousands, of educational escape rooms being released every year by universities and museums. And believe me, I know I try to play them. I also run the Escape Industry newsletter, so I try to log them all. I try to write about them all. I try to reach out and be active and engaged in the community and kind of promote them to people who are living in the area. But these ones I just mentioned, they're really good because they're really fun. As simple as that. So, as mentioned a little bit earlier, this is my brief, aggressive defense of fun. In short, the word educational often gets used with a warning label. So, like, oh, here is an educational escape room, but don't worry, it's also fun. And as I say, I hate hearing that. As an escape room designer, absolutely none of that. Fun is not the consolation prize. I don't think I have to tell this particular group of people, very academic and smarter people than me, that some of the most effective learning experiences in history are also the most engaging, and it's not necessarily just sitting in a lecture hall listening to a lecture. It's stories, it's songs, it's rituals, and of course, it's games. Our ancient ancestors didn't sit through a PowerPoint presentation on how to hunt mammoths. It was kind of passed through community and passed through common learning and stuff. And I believe we are talking about pedagogy. At this point, I want to shout out to Mike Collins for teaching me the word pedagogy a couple of years back when I first met him, and then proceeding to use that word in every single conversation we have ever had since. And if you want to learn more about pedagogy, I don't know, maybe there's like a cool book you can read about it or something. I don't know. I'm not an academic. Come back, rewatch, screenshot this if you want. I don't know. But yeah, before we move on, little sidebar. I know there's a billion little sidebars in this. My favorite genre of photo is people having an extreme amount of fun in escape rooms. Every escape room team has a marketing team. I actually did used to work in marketing for escape rooms, and they get people in rooms and just say like, look like you're having fun, more fun, smile bigger, wider. And I find that most actual real photos of teens in escape rooms, they're just having a normal amount of fun. Like this photo you'll recognize from Mike's talk earlier. This unspecified group of people, normal friends, are just having a normal amount of fun. Or actually, on closer look, maybe I have to admit that some of us are having an extreme amount of fun in escape rooms. Yes, Mike thought he could get away with not being featured heavily in my talk, but he is indeed. These are all photos from escape rooms I've played with Mike, and Mike has a disproportionate amount of fun in escape rooms. So shout out to my very good friend Mike, whose talk was earlier today. But yeah, my thesis. Fun is the delivery mechanism for learning. It's not a distraction. Fun. The puzzle is the spoonful of sugar, and you don't have to apologize for the sugar. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when considering what makes a good academic escape room. The second thing they all do very well is specificity of theme. And what do I mean by this? I mean that The designers and organizers of educational escape rooms have genuine expertise in their field, and they know what it is about their field, which is cool. What's the fun, spicy thing that's worth teaching to other people? I would argue that specificity, especially in an escape room, is way more engaging than a generality. So, commercial escape room designers, speaking from experience, generally have to be, well, literally that, very general in order to attract a broad audience. Um, I get given a lot of briefs sometimes, and it's just the most vague thing. It's like, oh, let's make an escape room set in the past. And I'm like, okay, okay. Okay, which past? Sure. I'll just make one that appeals to anyone who likes history. Sure. But you guys, I'm pointing at you guys in the chat, you don't have to do that because you are, in theory, making an educational escape room. So you can be as specific as you want. And here's an example that I love to talk about, a very specific theme. Again, an escape room in Edinburgh. Sorry for the over representation of Edinburgh. I lived there for many years. But there's a room in Edinburgh about one specific cabinet maker in the 1700s. And this room is so much more interesting than a room set vaguely in the past. By designing something incredibly specific, you have genuine, legitimate narrative stakes. So you must stop the evil wizard is interesting, but is it? It's not as specific. Yeah, what am I trying to say? You must stop the evil wizard is fun, but let's say you are archaeologists uncovering a real historical event. Much more interesting than something vague and broad. I would even go so far as to say it's actually a lot easier to make an escape room about something hyper-specific than broad. And so this is where I come back to that question I asked at the very beginning, which is, what do you do? Because I wanted to scroll back and I wanted to go through some of your very niche job titles, and I wanted to potentially give you some ideas of what escape rooms you might do. So that's why I'm like stuttering right now because I'm like scrolling back and trying to read every single person. I'm like, oh my God, everyone said some really interesting things, and I'm like, which ones do I possibly pick? But yeah, I wanted to like take a second because this is what I do for my job. Like a lot of people come to me and they're like, I want to make an escape room, and I'm like, okay. Tell me what the cool thing, what do you want people to take from this escape room? And it often helps to start with what your specialism is. So, scrolling back through the people who have commented on what they do, and if you haven't commented on what you do already, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I will hopefully get to it. And I wanted to give you some vague ideas of what you might want to do. I see Emma says, oh, mine's boring. No, Emma, yours is probably interesting. I don't know who you are if you ended up posting, but it's probably interesting. Okay, I'm seeing a bunch of people who wrote that they work in student outreach. And this is a bit of an interesting one. I will say that I've definitely thought about this before because I have actually worked on a couple of student outreach adjacent rooms in the past. But if you work in student outreach, something that might be quite interesting to do is well, go back to the root of like why what am I doing? What do I want to get from this? Students are coming to your city and they want to know what makes your city so awesome. So if we go back to what the tourism board did, for example, what about something like a self-guided puzzle trail that starts and ends at the university and takes them round the things in your city that makes your city so interesting, for example? Like, and also they're probably students, so probably some stops as well. Speaking of someone who was once a student and all I did for those 3 years was drink, maybe some cool stuff like that. But yeah, you want students to come to your town, come to your city and be like, this was really fun, I want to go here, kind of thing. So yeah, that's probably what I would suggest to someone in that kind of thing. I'm scrolling through. Ooh, so Sarah Atkinson said something interesting about biodiversity loss and climate change fun. Sorry, I am reading everyone, by the way, but like I'm just like I'm like a magpie. I see shiny thing and I'm like, I want to talk about that one. Biodiversity loss and climate change fun is also a really interesting one. So I'm speaking directly to Sarah Atkinson at this moment. But for you, if you were going to make an escape room, maybe you could do something like, okay, I'm thinking more about the climate change thing, but if I understand correctly, and this is me not being an academic girly, but I'm trying to find the fun, you have like sort of ice cores, right? Like little ice core samples. And I feel like that in the process of like decoding an ice core is a really interesting thing. Because if I understand correctly, you have like gas bubbles and like isotope stuff and like ash layers and stuff like that. I feel like every single one of those could be its own little isolated puzzle, kind of like okay, we need to solve something to do with like the bubbles, and then that gives us the code for that. And then, yeah, maybe you've got like a sort of fake machine or like a computer in the corner, and it's kind of like analyzing in inverted commas the ice data, but really it's just a password system. I mean, like you say, what's the word you get from the ice? What's the word you get from the bubble puzzle? You put it in, and it's like, oh, it tells you about a cool thing. So, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stuff you could do at that. Um, as I was scrolling through, someone said something about history, and I can't find who it was. Who was it? Was it someone who did? Ooh, someone does microbiology, molecular. Oh, we've got a lot of science people here today. I expected more like history people, but we like science. Um, okay, what can I say about the science? What can I say about that? Ooh, okay, so I have this. This is probably me assuming what I think your job is, and I do not know what your job is, but this is to Virtue Solano, who works at the University of Aberdeen, Scottish person. Woo, shout out. Um, I would recommend for something about like microbiology or molecular biology. The thing that I find fun about that is potentially like modifying biological systems and kind of getting into the DNA of something and being able to take apart those building blocks and rearrange it. So I think a really fun escape room puzzle you could have around something like that would be exactly that, like a jigsaw. So if you had like a jigsaw, for example, like a long thing jigsaw with the different sort of CTAG little snippets of like DNA that make up biology, as it were, and let people rearrange them and be able to get different outcomes from that, that might be quite interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to talk about this for hours, but yeah, that I'm like, did anyone write about history? No one wrote about history. Okay, I like history and no one's in history. I was like, let me give you a billion ideas for history. Um, Okay, I've got like one eye on the time, so I'm actually going to skip over this, but like we should come back to this. If you guys want to talk, please, please, please just grab me afterwards. I will gladly give you a billion ideas for like things to do. Like I love this. But yeah, I've just realized there's only 20 minutes left, less than 20 minutes, so I'm going to speed on. In case no one gave me anything to work with, I did actually make a tier list of interesting things. I didn't know how many people would come to this talk, and in case nobody replied, I was like, here's some things I would like people to make escape rooms about. So if you're watching this slide and you see something here that you even know what it is, you have to make an escape room about this. Like, because I've said it now, you have to. Yeah, Emma is with me. The bloop sound. Can someone please make an escape room out of the bloop sound? Because I don't understand what it is, and I want to solve puzzles and learn what it is. So if that's anyone's area of speciality, please go forth, make the escape room, send me an email, invite me to play it. But yeah, a lot of interesting things. A lot of people working in academia know really cool niche things. And I do feel like speaking to my friends who work in academia, they don't know what they know because they know it. And I don't know what they know, and I want to know what they know. So if they just made puzzles for me to solve to tell me about the things that they know, I would be so much happier. So yeah, just speak to your students, speak to your colleagues, figure out the fun in your niche, and yeah, make an escape room. It's a cool way to teach people stuff. So yeah, this brings me to my last point. I promise this is my last point, and it's an important one. You guys have an advantage that you probably don't even realize, and it is actually one of the things commercial studios would probably kill for. You guys have handcuffs. No, I'm joking. You have a captive audience. This is the only image I could find for it. If someone is bored in a commercial escape room, they just leave. Like sometimes emotionally, sometimes physically. And this doesn't happen in educational escape rooms as much because there's a little bit more of a suspension of disbelief. The players aren't just there to solve puzzles, they're also there to learn. They're there to support you and they're there for the education of it all. And perhaps more important than a captive audience, you have captive experts, Isaac Newton, you have subject matter experts on tap. So, as I say, there's a lot of interesting people in this chat. Like, you're all from very science departments, which is incredible, but you might have some of the world's greatest, like, cutting edge technologists, like in biology and linguists and history, like, whatever it is, just down the corridor. Wherever you're working, you're surrounded by people with such incredible niche knowledge, and commercial designers don't have that. Like, and I'm again really speaking from experience, we have vibes. We have broad strokes for broad themes. The number of times I worked on a pirate room, I don't know anything about pirates. I'm going on pure vibes, vibes on Wikipedia. which I'm sure you agree is probably not the best source of information to get your facts. But yeah, you have subject experts on tap, and that is incredible. And you guys should be using that. I mean, you are, but I feel like commercial designers should be using that as well. You also, just a final note, also have repeat access to your players. So you can iterate, refine, debrief, improve, and commercial escape rooms often just have one shot. So their room is on the market and players start playing, players start reviewing, and sure, good game designers should test, but I think educational escape rooms have a much bigger advantage than a commercial one in that space. So, bringing it to the conclusion, let's be practical. Every single one of you listening to this is in education, which probably means you have your cool niche knowledge or the thing you want to do, or you're working with students and the curriculum and know about the things that you know and the kids need to know. And hopefully, I've given you a little bit of inspiration. But let's say you have this cool thing in your brain, and I'm here to tell you, don't just make a lecture about it, make an escape room. But putting on an escape room is neither free nor easy. So I thought I would stop being a silly Billy for like 5 minutes and actually share some practical tips that I do share with the people I mentor. Um, I don't know the specific processes of your university, museum, or educational organization, but some very quick tips. Number one, everything is an escape room. What do I mean? You should start with the absolute minimum viable escape room. What is the least amount of materials you need? And spoiler alert, it is way less than you think. So if you call back to Escape the Vault, putting aside the fact they put a whole ass car in their escape room, the actual puzzles were mostly like laminated sheets of paper on a table. And sure, this one I've got a photo of also had a test tube holder. And I might be wrong, but most science departments probably have test tube holders and a laminating machine. And if you don't, you have much bigger problems going on at your university to discuss with the bosses and the powers that be. But yeah, an escape room can be the simplest thing possible. It could be a single sheet of paper, a single computer. Maybe you want to go to the library on campus and hide something in a book. Also, pretty sick. But yeah, simple, minimum viable. And my next tip, start with one puzzle. Making an escape room is huge and daunting, and even I get very scared. 100 design projects later, I am terrified of starting a new project. I hate the feeling of buying a notebook and having to write on the first page and like looking at the first page and be like, I've just spent £10 on this gorgeous notebook. I'm going to put it on my shelf and never touch it again, which is what I do all the time. So this is my practical tip to not be like me. Don't do that. Just make one puzzle. No one needs 5 or 6 puzzles. You don't need a whole room. You can just make one puzzle, one cipher, one locked box, one single lock on a piece of, I don't know, on a folder. Take a folder, lock it, one puzzle, done. See what happens. It might turn into a whole escape room. It might just be that one cool puzzle you made. Both are cool, both are valid. My next tip, you don't even need permission. Failing everything, you actually don't need a budget, you don't need a room, and you do not need institutional blessing to prototype. Emphasis on prototype. To prototype something, you just need like an index card and a bad idea. And at some point, that bad idea might turn into a not so bad idea. And then you can start pitching it upwards to the powers that be, maybe. I have a fourth tip here as well, and I did say at the start that I wasn't going to make this a game design talk either. I do a lot of talks on game design, and I was like, not today. But I have one game design tip, just one. If you remember only one thing, um, diegesis, and this is my time where I get to say a big academic word. Please, for the love of God, make your game diegetic. And what do I mean by that? Players, when they enter your game space, suspend their disbelief, which is how you can get away with just having a sheet of laminated paper on a table. But don't do anything wacky to like suspend their like to break their to break their belief. Yeah, they're suspending their disbelief. You don't do anything to break that disbelief. And what do I mean? Don't do this. I swear to God, if I play another pirate themed room that uses Morse code in a pirate themed room, I will cry. Or if there's like an ancient Egyptian temple that supposedly hasn't been opened in 1,000 years, and then I walk into this temple and there's a damn 4-digit padlock. Oh my God. Oh my God. We can't be doing this. But you guys are academics, and I trust you all in this call to not do that. Please don't do that. So yeah, back to my point. Practical things. The most practical thing I can possibly share is funding, which is maybe, yeah, the most practical thing of our whole society, right? That's how money makes the world go round. So, how to get your room funded. When you start pitching, a lot of people, whoever that is going to ask, where's the money? And this part of my talk is a tiny bit trickier because things work very differently in different countries. But if I were advising any escape room designer or any immersive designer, here are some places I would recommend to think about going for funding. Just because you're designing something educational does not mean that you're not eligible for various different funds and various collaborations. I really don't think it's all that different. So, number one, you could fund yourself. Unless you are a millionaire, maybe don't do that if you have other options, but you could fund it yourself. Number two, get a private investor. If you have a friend who's a millionaire and also likes escape room, this is the perfect time to send them a text. Be like, hey, I got an idea. You could also crowdfund it. And I often give talks about crowdfunding, and usually people expect me to say Kickstarter. And yes, Kickstarter is valid, but here I'm mostly talking about you could send a departmental email, say, hey, I want to put on this thing. Will you chip in a few dollars, a few pounds? Cool. Why not? You could also collaborate with third parties. What do I mean by third parties? You might have local escape room companies that design really good rooms that want to get involved. They might be dying to work with an academic institution. Believe me, the escape room owners I know would love that. So, yeah, it could also be a pub. It could also be a library. It could be the local mayor. I don't know. Like anyone with money, time, or resources, or space, or anything you could possibly be lacking, you might have that in your city already if you just want to send a couple of emails around. The last thing is you could apply for a grant. Loads of grants exist depending on what sort of escape room you're doing, whether that's physical, digital, tabletop, etc. And I'm going to spin this into one bigger slide. And this is, I promise, the most information dense slide in the whole thing. Feel free to screenshot, feel free to download it from the portal afterwards. Grants. Whoa. I will gladly share this list and I will gladly talk about this as well afterwards for anyone who wants to know. This is very UK centric. So, as I say, I mentor a lot of people here in the UK, but actually at the moment I'm working with someone in Spain and someone in the Netherlands to apply for grants for like immersive experiences there. So, if you're listening and you're not from the UK, ask me anyway. I might know some great local ones that you guys can apply to or where you could even start to look. But yeah, big list of grants on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I just wanted to mention briefly that you could also ask the educational bodies you already work for. You might already have some kind of fund already under your noses. I've heard of a lot of places offering funds for innovative teaching or student experience grants. And in particular, I want to shout out the Newcastle University Educational Enhancement Grant and the University of Exeter Experiment. Blah, blah, blah. I can't talk. I'm like trying to read off my slides. The University of Exeter Experimentation Grant. There we go. I actually don't know if they're still running the grants, but when I was doing my research for this talk, they seemed incredibly cool and incredibly useful. And similarly, the University of Sunderland Silver Fund, which is, I believe, a student union fund, actually did use it to build an escape room for resilience and emotional coping skills. So that's pretty cool. Shout out to them. And if all else fails, and this is me really not knowing what I'm talking about when it comes to education, research grants. And what I mean by this is if the escape room you want to work on supports some sort of research agenda you could possibly relate to your field, you may also be able to get an escape room funded as part of your impact project of your funded research. I'm not the expert to answer questions on that, but this just seemed like something that I was seeing coming up when I was doing a lot of research about that. And I think it's well worth considering depending on your local situation. So, in conclusion, go forth and make escape rooms. Even if you don't have all the pieces, I would implore you to make the thing anyway. And honestly, who cares if your idea sucks and you can't get funding? The world needs more games and the world needs more cool people making cool games. And yeah, I've said it a ton of times, but I'm not in academia, but I do know a lot about escape rooms, way too much. Ask anyone who knows me, I know way too much. And I just wanted to leave you with the thought that escape rooms at their core are about the transformation of a player. So people go into an escape room experience and they enter not knowing and they leave knowing They leave having figured something out, and that is the whole thing. And I don't need to tell you guys this, but what I just described was also education. It's also teaching. So if you are to put on some kind of escape room and even one person leaves and feels like they learned something new or even feels inspired to make something for themselves, then that's a win. You did it. You taught someone something. You did the whole thing, the whole point. And so this is my ask. I would love everyone in this talk to go out and make something imperfect, make something low budget, ambitious, weird. Make it fun, make it specific, and trust that the learning will follow in this cool thing that you are making. So yeah, thank you for coming for my talk. That is pretty much everything. I sped through those last two slides, but I thought I'd leave a quick slide on if people do want to contact me. Obviously, I will be in the panel shortly, but if you want to contact me in a month, in a year's time, I need no excuse to talk about escape rooms, and you can find me everywhere at Mari Spaceship, which is my real name. And also, I mentioned the escapeindustry.com and TERPECA, which many people have mentioned, but I might as well chuck some links on there as well.